So with that, I would like to welcome everyone. I would like to thank you for taking time out of your morning if you're here in the United States, if you're in Europe, time out of your afternoon, and if you are in Asia, perhaps China or India, which is where we have a lot of applicants coming from, then good evening. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us for this webinar. This webinar will be about 30 minutes long, and there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So I do encourage you to utilize that question section and ask questions along the way, or if you want to wait, you can answer or submit your questions at the very end. You may find that the question that comes up will actually be covered somewhere else in the webinar. This webinar is intended as a general overview. So you will find that I'm going to be covering a lot of different topics. I'm going to be talking about the program in general. I'm going to be talking about some ranking information, the application process, fellowships, and financing. So it's going to move pretty quickly, but it's intended as an overview. In the next few weeks, our team will be doing additional webinars that are going to explore subtopics. So next week, we're going to be doing an application tips webinar. And then that webinar, we're going to be talking purely about the application process and how to put together a strong application. In weeks after that, we're going to be doing a webinar that focuses purely on the Capstone projects. And we'll also do a webinar that is highlighting career support and employment outcomes for alumni of the program. So today's webinar is just going to be an overview. So a little bit about me. You are listening to Emily Dayton. That is me. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions, and I work with the full-time Master of Science in Business Analytics program. I have been in this role as the admissions advisor for 6 years. That is when the program launched. So I have the honor and the pleasure of working with every single applicant, everyone who has ever expressed interest in the program, and every single admitted student and alumni that has gone through the program. I work with prospective students. I work with applicants who are navigating the application process. I also support the admissions committee and a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes administratively. And I also support admitted students who have an admissions offer, who are going through the deposit stage, who have questions about what it means to be a graduate student at UC San Diego. If you have questions, you are always welcome to reach out to me. My personal email is edayton@ucsd.edu. And I'm here to support you. I'm here to answer questions that you have about the program and about the process. So at any point between now and whenever your journey ends with us, whether that is at the application stage or when you become an incoming current student and you're working with student affairs, you're always welcome to email me. The MSBA program does offer a flex weekend version. This is a part-time version of the MSBA program that's offered on Saturdays, alternating Saturdays. And although the curriculum of those two programs is largely the same, I only support the full-time. We have a wonderful admissions advisor named Nancy, and she is the admissions advisor for the Flex Weekend program. So much of the information that you hear today is somewhat relevant or applicable to the Flex Weekend as well. That program is brand new. They are welcoming their first cohort right now. So a lot of the content in this webinar is based on these 6 years of the full-time program. And here's a little bit of what you can expect today in the next 25 minutes that we're going to spend together. I'm going to briefly just go over some key points of the Rady School of Management in UC San Diego. We're going to quickly highlight what exactly is business analytics. That's a question that I get a lot. We are going to talk about the Rady MSB program itself and what are its key components. We're then going to briefly talk about some career outcomes that we have seen from our amazing alumni. Then we're going to touch upon logistical information that falls under admissions and financing. And then finally at the end, I will share our next upcoming event. So the Rady School has actually been around for about 20 years, but our specialized programs are quite new. The finance program was the first specialized program that the Rady School offered, followed by the MSBA program, and then the professional accountancy program just a couple of years ago. And the Rady School's mission statement is a key part of its identity. And as you can see there, the Rady School invests in exceptional people who champion top-tier research and pioneering initiatives, while we extend our STEM programs throughout the university, our community, and the world. And this really does represent a lot of who Rady is. We're a very international school. We have students that come from all over the world. All of our graduate programs are STEM designated. And so for our international students, that means if you're on an F1 student visa, you have the opportunity to apply for that 2-year STEM extension on your OPT after that first initial year. So the Rady MSBA program was recently ranked 12th in the United States by QS Business Masters ranking under the Business Analytics ranking. That is the premier ranking for business analytics program. So we are always honored and excited to be well ranked within the United States. And the Rady School of Management is part of the UC San Diego community. That is the larger campus on which we sit and of which we are a member. UCSD was recently ranked number 3 as a best public college by Forbes in 2021, and then ranked 8th best colleges in the US by US News and World Report. If you've never been to San Diego, it's an amazing city. There's some great things to know about us. The nickname is America's finest city, and that's largely due to the really beautiful weather that we have here. We're a Mediterranean climate, and San Diego is situated right on the Pacific Ocean, south of Los Angeles. We are California's 2nd largest city and the 8th largest in the US. So we have a really robust economy. There's a lot of biotech, pharma, a really large military presence, and engineering and technology. And as UCSD, we are a top-ranked research university, again, with a lot of advances in technology, engineering, and science. So now we're going to transition into business analytics. What is it and how is it different from data science? I get this question a lot. Business analytics is essentially data science for business decision making. Data science is using the quantitative and technical tools to do analytics on all of the data that's out there. And business analytics is taking the data science tools and technologies and applying it towards business decision making. So how do businesses make decisions? What's important to a business, and how are analytics going to be part of the value that a business provides? Things that are not business analytics but are still data science. Some examples might be students who are using data in weather forecasting or in climate change or oceanography. Those are really great examples of how data science can be used, but that's not necessarily in the context of how businesses are making decisions. So that's a little bit of a key difference. Business analytics is simply using data science concepts and tools for business decision making. And why is this really important? Well, as we all know, there are a lot of devices out there. There are laptops, smartphones, iPads, the Internet of Things with all of our smart technologies. And this provides, or produces rather, a lot of data. That data is, the volume of it is exploding, right? So more data is being created, there's more and more of it. And then the velocity is also increasing. The rate at which new information is being produced is increasing exponentially as well. The analysis that is actually done on this data is relatively small. Just a few years ago, it was less than 1% of all data is ever analyzed and used. So there's a huge potential for the data that businesses have and then how they use that information. And what does that look like? Well, for businesses, that is things like credit card transactions, travel, really anything that we do online, right? Purchasing, streaming, just navigating around websites, what we're watching, what we're posting online. It's also information that we provide to them on our income demographics or where we are when we're using a certain app or website. So companies have all of this information, and they have the potential to do a variety of things, right? They can simply describe behaviors and patterns. They can also compare. So how does their consumer behavior on one website compare to consumer behavior on another website? They can also classify. Perhaps they're trying to determine what sort of rebates or coupon offers to provide to customers, and they segment or classify those customers into different groups with similar shopping patterns. And then finally, they can predict what's going to happen if a business makes certain types of decisions. And this is really important because some research a few years ago out of McKinsey estimated a shortage of nearly 200,000 data scientists, right? There is a huge need for individuals in business who are proficient in statistics, and programming, and probability, who know how to ask the right questions, and who know how to interpret what the data is saying, and then provide that data into actionable insights. So this is really where the demand for a business analytics degree comes in. It's not just enough to be really great at statistics. If a business hires a statistician, they might get some amazing statistics out of that. But unless you are an expert in statistics, that might not translate into an actual decision or an action that a business needs to take, right? And so for business analytics, which is using data science in business decision making, that's really kind of the unicorn of three really important and valuable areas. So one is computer science. That's the technical side of the program. That's working with R and Python and SQL. Then you add in the math and statistics component, right? That's the linear algebra and the calculus and the statistics and probability of X and Y and Z happening. And you combine that with subject matter expertise. That is becoming an expert in marketing analytics or customer behavior or fraud analytics, the areas of business that there needs to be an expert and decision-making happening. And so when you take all of those together, you get that unicorn in the middle, which is data science. And in business analytics, it's using the computer science, the subject matter expertise, and the math and statistics, and applying it towards the way that businesses make decisions. And so with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the Rady MSBA program. So as we've just heard, companies are looking for technically skilled individuals who can work in teams and frame key business questions, operational, logistical, supply chain, strategic, marketing, etc., and then use data and analytics to find answers to those questions. The Rady MSBA program is quite technical and it's absolutely very rigorous. So who should apply to this program? Who is the admissions committee looking for? We are looking for high achieving, academically strong individuals. The UC system and UC San Diego is a top tier school. And so academically strong individuals are individuals who are going to perform at the level that's expected of them. We also look for individuals who are comfortable with quantitative concepts and statistical applications. This is a highly quantitative and technical program. So for that, it's things like programming, R, Python, linear algebra, statistics, etc. We would also encourage you to apply if you are really anywhere in your career. This program is actually very friendly and a great fit for recent graduates, meaning you have no work experience, or maybe you just have a couple months of work experience. You're newly graduated. We also have a lot of students who are early career, typically 1 to 5 years of work experience, and maybe you're realizing that there are some holes in your skill sets that you would like to fill, or maybe you've been working on the back end and you'd like to transition to the front end and be more client facing. There's a lot of reasons to go back to school early. And then finally, career transitioners. These are people typically with 5 to 10 years or more of work experience. They've been doing one role or in one certain type of industry, and they're ready to transition into something else. In the Rady MSBA program, we typically see about a 50-50 mix of individuals coming straight from an academic, no work experience background, and about 50% coming in with work experience. And finally, an aptitude and a passion for solving complex and multifaceted problems. This program is pretty tough, and it's going to be really overwhelming at times. Students who are really successful in this program have a great deal of grit and perseverance. They keep trying even when they don't get it on the first time. When you're job hunting and looking for that next amazing offer to move into at the conclusion of the program, that can really be a challenging time too. You're applying to a lot of different opportunities. You don't necessarily hear back. You've got to keep going. And so that aptitude and that passion for what you're doing is really important. Our admissions committee absolutely looks for individuals who have great positive energy and enthusiasm and are excited about what they're learning, because they're going to bring that energy into the cohort. So there are 3 pillars of the Rady MSBA program. The first one is to identify business opportunities. That's the business side of the courses. We are a business school. All of your courses are going to be business classes. And that's really understanding how businesses make decisions, and then the role that analytics plays in creating value for businesses. It's also understanding analytics projects. How do you evaluate the costs and the benefit of any analytics initiative that a department or business might want to undertake? How do you allocate and manage the various resources you have? That's staff and budgetary resources and time. The second pillar is generating the business insights. And that's really the quantitative and technical side of the program, where you're working with data, you're applying statistical, econometric, and machine learning models, you're programming with R and Python, SQL for querying. That's the quantitative and technical side. And then finally, the third pillar is developing business solutions. That is bringing them together, those pillars 1 and pillars 2. That's integrating the various decision models, data, and the analytical tools that you've been using. It's working with decision makers. Who actually is going to make a decision based on the analytics project or statistical outcomes that you've been working on? And as part of the program, all of our students experience the full life cycle of a business analytics initiative, aka the Capstone Project. And that's what we're going to look at next. So the Rady full-time MSBA Capstone Project is a key component. It's a required component of our program. Students typically go through the capstone in the last quarter of the program, so the last 10-week section. The Capstone Project is a planned experience, meaning that there is structure to it. Our amazing executive director is responsible for identifying capstone projects with company sponsors and putting together kind of the purpose of the capstone for that particular company. What is that company looking for? What's the problem that they're going to be solving? And what is the value and deliverable that they're hoping to get back? Capstone projects are an opportunity for students to apply the knowledge that you've been learning in the program, right? This is your opportunity to showcase what you've learned and actually use it to help a real company with a real problem. You will work on your problem-solving skills, your teamwork skills, and your communication skills. That's kind of where we talk about those pillars coming together, right? The hard skills and the soft skills. And you'll learn and practice about how to be a business analytics professional. So this is where everything is coming together. So we have a wide variety of Capstone Project sponsors. Some of them are continuous every year. They come back, they have another project for students, and other ones come back and or offer a project one time. So we've seen a number of projects over the years from Petco. Petco is a pet retailer headquartered here in San Diego. Direct Avenue is a digital marketing firm. I believe they're also here in the San Diego area. Miram and Certona, you don't see them on this list, but those are also digital marketing companies here in San Diego that tend to offer a project here. Bumblebee is a food company, a seafood company based here in San Diego. HP, Mazda in the auto company, Banorte in the financial industry, Jenny Craig in weight management and health. So a wide variety of projects and their sponsors. And now we're going to look at actually some of the projects. So this is just a quick sample list. We have brand new projects every year for each cohort. One of the great things that our cohort, or that rather, excuse me, that our program has seen is each team of students, and teams are typically 4 students, has a different project. So the idea is that each team's getting a unique project. It's not necessarily a competition where all teams are working on the same project and a company wants to see who could do it best. Rather, each team has its own project and its own company sponsor. There are a wide variety of types of projects. You can see some here. For example, optimizing online rebate, accounting for competition and cannibalization. That is essentially a company asking, if we want to offer a coupon, what's the ideal amount? How many people are going to use it? Optimizing labor across theme parks based on different variables, right? So the theme park has multiple locations and they're trying to figure out how they should be staffed. How does things like weather impact how many people are going to show up, and then does that impact how many people they should have staffed? Predicting churn for an online gaming platform. This is with a company that we actually have a number of alumni working there, and they typically host a project most years. They offer online games, and one year their project was predicting when people would churn, when they would leave playing the platform. Is there something that they could do to prevent that from happening and decrease the rate of churn? These are some sample projects. The program works really hard to offer a variety of projects that span different industries, as well as different areas of business. So some projects might be focused more on supply chain, others on marketing, others on customer behavior, etc. We're going to talk a lot more about the Capstone Project experience in one of our later webinars. We'll hear from our executive director in that webinar as well. A common question I get about Capstone Projects is how students get matched with them, how they get selected for a project. There is a matching system. Students will absolutely have the opportunity to indicate which Capstone projects are their first choice, all the way down to those that they are the least interested in. And then there's a matching algorithm for that. And then faculty also take into consideration skill sets that students have. Some projects might require a high degree of proficiency in R or in Python, or some might be really heavy in statistics. And they want to make sure that students who are getting matched with those projects, as a team, they're going to be strong and they're going to be able to deliver on what the company is looking for. So overall, you've completed, you've moved through the program, you've done your Capstone project. What can you expect as academic outcomes for yourself that you're going to be able to offer to an employer? You'll be working with and analyzing large sets of data, and that's everything from collecting, cleaning, and visualizing. You'll be designing and implementing a variety of optimization and predictive models. You'll be managing projects and understanding what that looks like with limited business resources. And of course, using a variety of statistical, machine learning, and optimization tools, and taking that all together, transforming data into actionable business insights. All right. So we're going to transition now into some more just general information about the program and the cohort, less of the academic information that we just covered. This is a full-time program. It is on campus in San Diego. Because of COVID, there has been a lot of virtual components, but UC San Diego is returning to on-campus instruction in just a few weeks for the fall quarter. So this program is returning to residential on-campus in-person full-time program. It is a one-year program, and it begins in August each year. And this is important to know because UC San Diego is on the quarter system. And at UC San Diego, August is considered a summer quarter. So this is considered a summer start. It's late in the summer, but it is technically a summer start. It is a STEM designated program. So as I mentioned, if you are an international student and you'll be on an F1 student visa while you're completing this program, that does make you eligible for that 2-year STEM extension on your OPT. So that's up to 3 years on OPT to study or then to work in the US. Our current cohort that just started in August has 100 students. For next year's 2022 cohort, we anticipate roughly the same. Typically, the program is aiming for 90 to 100 students. For our cohort profile, we're really proud that we are almost a 50-50 mix of men and women. A lot of times, business programs have a reputation for being having a high percentage of men, but specialized programs tend to be really evenly balanced. We are really popular overseas. We have a lot of different countries that are represented. So typically we're about 20% domestic and about 80% international. And as I mentioned, we're about 50-50, in this case, 55-45 in terms of having full-time work experience versus no work experience. We also have a range of backgrounds. So depending on what you studied, if you studied a STEM degree or a quantitative degree, chances are you're going to have a really solid foundation for being a great fit for this program. That doesn't mean that if you studied something else that you can't apply, but you'll want to think about how to build up your quantitative skill set. And that's the topic that we'll be covering in next week's application tips webinar is how to be a strong applicant. And you can see there on the right the variety of countries that are represented. This cohort profile is from the cohort that's just about to graduate. In our new cohort, we have additional countries like Greece, Costa Rica, and Purdue represented as well. We've also had Germany, Puerto Rico, and Egypt in the past. So another great benefit of the Rady MSBA program is our amazing Career Management Center. They do a lot to support students. Obviously, we are simply one stepping stone in your journey of getting that amazing job. The Rady Career Management Center offers personalized coaching. So the MSBA program does have a designated career counselor. Her name is Jeanette, and she's available for one-on-one counseling to talk about career goals. She can help with interview preparation and negotiating compensation offers. As a team, the career team does a lot of workshops, things that you would expect: cover letters and resumes, mock interviews, group interviewing, networking. For the MSBA program, they'll do some workshops in preparation for technical interviews. And then some of the tools and the resources they use, you can see there on the right. I also included some of the conferences that I have seen our MSBA students attend over the years. The Tableau conference, Data Science Go is a conference that is typically based here in San Diego or Southern California. The Open Data Science Conference is a hugely popular conference up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then Women in Data Science is typically a virtual conference, or at least it's happening up at Stanford, and then it gets live streamed out. And so typically the Rady Analytics Club offers a live stream option for that. There's a lot of great resources for students in the Career Center. And when we look at how students are finding jobs, it's really a variety of ways. Sometimes it's an alumni referral, sometimes it is a career fair or a job posting that is available through the Rady Career Center. And other times it's a job posting that the student found on LinkedIn or on the company's website. When we look at what our MSBA alumni are doing, we see all industries represented. And that really does reflect the applicability of the Rady MSBA degree to all industries. When our faculty built this program 6 or 7 years ago, they built a program that would teach the foundational and critical thinking skill sets, the ability to understand the scope of a project, and then determine the best approach. And that was really intentional because they wanted students to have a skill set that would allow them to be successful in a wide variety of industries. And I think you can see that represented on the list of industries where we have alumni that have gone off to and have been very successful. And when it comes to positions, basically any position in business, if you add the word analyst, we have an alumni doing that. So marketing, supply chain, strategy, pricing, customer, product, and operations. And that's really typical of someone who's has a great skill set and is something to offer a business. I think it also reflects the wide variety of goals of the students who come into our programs. There's a lot of diversity, not just in countries and where people are coming from, but in career goals and also in backgrounds. So where have our students actually gone? You can see some sample companies here. Our 2021 students are just finishing up their program, so they haven't graduated yet, so they don't have job offers that we're going to be sharing at this point because they're still students. But we're really excited to have students who go off and do a wide variety of things. I've included some of the more well-known companies on this slide, but we do find students who work at a lot of smaller regional companies that if you're outside of Southern California, you might not have heard of, but that are really awesome offers. We've had a number of students at Qualcomm and Walmart, both at Walmart headquarters in Arkansas, but also at Walmart Labs here in Southern California. As I mentioned, Petco is a pet retailer that's headquartered here in San Diego, and they have supported both Capstone Project sponsors, but then they also make offers to our students. These companies represent both domestic and international student employment. And as I mentioned, we're about 80% international out of our programs. And so absolutely, these success stories are representing international students just as much as they're representing domestic students. All right, so we're gonna transition into the last section of the webinar here. Thank you all much for, I see questions coming in, that's awesome. We're gonna be jumping into those in about 5 minutes. I'm just gonna go over some quick logistical information about the actual application process. So the application for the full-time MSBA program for the August 2022 start is open now. If you navigate to our website, any webpage of the Rady School of Management, you'll typically see a blue or yellow button that says apply now or start your application here. If you click on that, it will take you to kind of a generic sign-in page. And if it's your first time visiting, you can go ahead and hit sign up at the bottom and create your account. And then after that, when you navigate back to that page, you can simply log in. So that's our online application. You can go in and out of it as frequently as you would like until it's complete and you hit that submit button. The application is going to ask for copies of all your transcripts. So if you studied abroad or if you maybe transferred schools or if you've earned an undergrad and a graduate degree, the application, and UC San Diego does require transcripts from all of those institutions. Unofficial transcripts are perfectly fine for the application. There's also a statement of purpose, and please be mindful of the fact that there is a specific prompt. That prompt is available both in the application and then also on our website. We'll also be talking a lot more about these components at the application tips webinar next week. This is a very quantitative program, so again, highlighting your quantitative experience and skill sets. The GRE or the GMAT is optional when applying to next year's program. This is still a holdover from the impacts of COVID on testing centers. So if you're looking at this next year, if you have a valid test score that you would like to submit, you're absolutely welcome to do that, but it's not required. So if you choose not to submit it, that won't be held against you. The admissions committee has always done holistic review. And so the review process doesn't change. It's simply an additional component if you choose to submit a test score. And for our international students, do note that UC San Diego does require English proficiency testing. So that's a valid TOEFL or IELTS, unless you have studied for at least 1 full year in an academic program in a country such as the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or the UK. There are a few other countries on there, but those are the ones we typically see students coming from. If you studied anywhere else than that, then you will need to submit a valid English proficiency. And then I just want to highlight our upcoming deadlines. We work on rolling admissions, so that means that you can submit your application at any point, and our staff will then check it for completeness and then forward immediately to the admissions committee. I do want to highlight 2 important deadlines. Our March 15th deadline, that is the final deadline for international applicants, and then our April 15th deadline, which is our final deadline for domestic applicants. And the application typically closes after that final deadline. My number 1 recommendation is to not wait until one of those final deadlines. I highly, highly encourage every one of you on the webinar today, and those of you listening to the recording in the future, to apply for one of the first 2, or even the January 7th, that 3rd deadline. This program is really competitive for 2 reasons. 1, we get way more applications than we have available seats in the cohort. So simply by volume of the applications that we get, that makes this a competitive program. The other component is that our applicants who apply to us are really strong. The majority of our applicants are amazing and make a great fit for the program. But again, we have such a limited number of seats that not everyone is going to be able to be offered an admissions offer. So by both volume and quality of applicants, it's a very competitive program. And so my number 1 recommendation to students always is to apply early. With financing options, the Rady School does offer a limited number of what we call Rady Scholar Fellowships. These are merit-based. Every student who is admitted into the program is reviewed. There's no separate application. The merit-based components are typically test scores, GPA, any work experience, and things like that. So they're not going so much off of your essay questions and more of those soft skill components. They're kind of looking at the hard metrics that are comparable across the applicant pool. If you are a graduate of the UC system, so any of the UC systems, if you've earned a degree from a UC school, the University of California school, we offer an additional $10,000 UC fellowship. That is in addition to the merit-based Rady Scholar Fellowship. In addition, we encourage students, if you're working and we encourage you to check with your employer to see if they offer any employer support. There are educational loans out there that we see a lot of our students take advantage of. And then finally, for domestic students, there is the FAFSA application. With that, I just want to highlight our next our next webinar. This time next week at 8 a.m. Pacific time here in San Diego. That is our full-time MSBA application tips webinar. This is our most popular webinar of all of the ones that we do. In this webinar, I will be walking through the application process. I'll be talking in more depth about all of the different admission requirements, the documents that we accept, and then provide some insight into what the admissions committee is looking for. We know it's a really overwhelming, unclear, and scary part of the graduate school process. And chances are you're probably applying to multiple schools. And so whatever you're doing with the Rady School, you're doing several times with other schools. And so we offer this webinar as a way to try to demystify the process and give you some tips for putting together a strong application. So that is the end of the content that I have for you today. I'm going to open up the question box here. I see a ton of them have come in, so that's fantastic. I will start answering them right away. Again, I want to emphasize that please do reach out if you have questions. My email is edayton@ucsd.edu. Typically, I'm able to get a response back in about 1 to 2 days at the max right now. As we get deeper into the admissions review process and I'm supporting the admissions committee, my response time does go down just a little bit, but I'll always get a response back to you. So if you have questions, go ahead and submit them in the question section now. A lot have come in, and I'm just going to start jumping into those right now. And we'll take questions up until throughout the next 15 to 20 minutes, right up until 9 a.m. Pacific time. So let me see here. So I have some questions about the an MSBA versus an MSDS. The Master's in Business Analytics versus a Master's of Science in Data Science. So I think this is really going to depend on whether or not you want to use those data science skills, or rather how you want to use those data science skills. If you want to apply data science skills to business decision making, you're going to want an MSBA. Data science programs are going to cover a lot of quantitative and technical tools, but they're not necessarily going to teach you how to apply them as tools for solving business problems, right? So someone in a data science program, as I mentioned, might go off and apply data science to a variety of other areas that are not necessarily business. So if you're interested in business, you want to be part of the way businesses make decisions, then you probably want to consider a business analytics degree. If you are interested in using data science skills in understanding climate change, that's probably going to be more of data science. And then there's a question about the two programs at UCSD. The MSBA is 12 months and the data science degree is 2 years. I don't know much about the data science degree. That's in a different department. I do believe that that program is a part-time program, so they're going, you're taking fewer classes at a slightly slower pace, so that might account for the difference. Specialized degrees like the MSBA program, schools actually, they're typically offered in about 12 months. It makes the program a little bit more cost efficient, certainly time efficient if you're taking a year off from working and investing in kind of yourself and your potential. And that's really appealing to students. I will be honest, the idea of getting a degree in 1 year when you can cover all of the content that you need versus 2 years is really appealing. So there's a question about learning more about Capstone Projects. So there's not a lot of information online about the impact of those. A lot of what teams are doing is confidential. They are signing NDAs or non-disclosure agreements with those companies, so they oftentimes can't necessarily talk about the insights or the values that they've created for that company, because that's a competitive advantage for those companies, and companies don't want their competitors to know what they're doing. We will be doing a webinar probably at the end of October that will focus on the Capstone Project experience. That will be with our executive director. So we're really excited to share more information about that. I don't think that we're going to be able to provide a lot of information about the exact companies, the exact projects, and the impact. A lot of that's going to be confidential information. There's a question about the 11-month and 17-month options. So this full-time program this year in the cohort that just started is experimenting with offering an extended 17-month option. This came out of the impacts of COVID when we were worried about our international students arriving late to the United States and then becoming ineligible for OPT. So this year the program is offering the traditional 11-month option, and then there's also an extension option at 17 months if students want to take the summer quarter off, the second summer quarter off, and pursue an internship. And then they would come back in the fall to complete the Capstone Project. Let me see. There's a question about job offers that come from Capstone Projects. I don't have a statistic on this. We do see overlap in companies that hire from our MSBA cohort and who offer Capstone Projects. I don't necessarily know which students are on which projects and which students are getting which job offers. So I cannot make an inference. I'm not going to assume that those are job offers that have come out of the Capstone Project. I have absolutely, though, seen companies. I think of a company like Jam City. They are based here in San Diego. They're the online gaming platform. They have offered Capstone Projects for a number of years, and then we also have a number of alumni working with them. So even if there's not a job offer coming directly out of that exact Capstone Project, there is certainly relationships between the program and various companies. And that means that those companies are actively looking at Rady MSBA students when they have job opportunities available. Let's see here. Oh, there's a great question about in terms of the application. How long does it take to get an answer back? This is a great question. So typically we say about 6 to 8 weeks. When you submit the application, number one, our staff first checks to make sure that everything is there, right? So if you submitted test scores, we have to verify those test scores. We have to make sure that your letters of recommendation have actually been submitted. So we count that 6 to 8 weeks from the moment that your application is deemed complete. So another tip is to make sure that when you do submit your application, make sure your letters are there. If your recommenders have not submitted them, get on them, encourage them to do that. Once we have everything that we need, it's typically about 6 to 8 weeks to get a decision back. That is a little bit longer in the high volume period, which is typically January and February. That's when we have the most applications. Typically the December and the January deadlines are our busiest, and we get a lot of applications. And so that can push the turnaround time out to about 8 weeks. So if you're applying to multiple schools, I would again encourage you to apply earlier to Rady if you're concerned about hearing from Rady, if that impacts your decision to apply to another school later on. And then once given an admissions offer, what is the time frame given to accept that admissions offer? This is a great question. It's typically around 4 to 6 weeks. I say that because when you're given an admissions offer, you'll then be given a deposit deadline. That's the deadline by which you need to make a decision. And if you want to join the cohort, to submit your $1,500 deposit to actually save your seat. As we get closer to the end of the admissions cycle and as the program start gets closer, typically that time gets shortened a little bit, but it's typically in the 4 to 6 week period. There's a question about, does UC San Diego accept Duolingo English test for its English proficiency? And it does not. UCSD does not accept Duolingo. it does have to be the TOEFL or the IELTS test. There's a great question about geographic distribution of full-time job placements. We don't have that as statistics on our website. I can tell you that most of our students are going to be on the West Coast. The San Francisco Bay Area is typically the most popular. We do have a lot of students who remain in the San Diego area, and then we also in LA, and then a few up in the Seattle area up there. One of the reasons that students choose the Rady MSBA program over other MSBA programs is our location in California and on the West Coast. So it makes sense that a lot of our graduates are staying on the West Coast. I have seen a couple of students. We had one student from the first cohort whose job that she picked up after the program was on the East Coast. One of our students who got a job with Walmart, she was with Walmart headquarters. They are located in Arkansas. So we do have students who leave the West Coast, but it's where a lot of our students wish to be, and we do see that reflected in where they're getting offers. There's a great question about what are the differences between rounds? How much of a difference is it by applying? Is it applying by the first round versus the second or third? So those application deadlines they're there for a couple of reasons. One is to give you, the applicant, something to aim for. They are also there for our staff because it gives us an idea of when we're going to get a lot of applications. When are we going to be super busy and probably working overtime and not going on vacation? So it gives us a way to manage our workload and also for the admissions committee. We have a variety of deadlines because there are always students who want to apply early on. Rady might be your first choice, but you are giving yourself a plan A and a plan B so that if you don't get admitted to Rady, you still are giving yourself plenty of time to apply elsewhere. So if that's you definitely want to think about one of those earlier deadlines. Also for peace of mind, right? If the idea of applying to graduate school, if you're a planner and this is overwhelming and you want to know what you're going to be doing next year, applying early is great. You'll get your admissions decision back, and if you get an offer, then you're all set. You can commit to the program, and then you can kind of relax for the rest of the year. Applying later, I would say our busiest deadlines, like I said, tend to be that December deadline and then the January deadline. This is, I think, reflective of the amount of time and care that people put into their application. That if it's now mid-September, and if you want to take the next few months to put together a strong application, if you're in a Western country or you're celebrating a holiday at the end of December, then you've got a winter break in there. And so it kind of is a natural point that you'd be applying by early January. Then there are always students who maybe didn't get into their first choice school and now they're applying to Rady in the late winter, or maybe they're just learning about the program for the first time and they kind of want to make a last minute effort. As I said, I really, really do not recommend that you apply in those final deadlines. This program typically, or rather the cohort typically reaches capacity by the time all of the applications typically from that January deadline have been processed. So if you're applying for that March 15th deadline, or even if you're applying at the end of February, by the time your application gets processed, the cohort might be at capacity and there might be no more admission offers that the admissions committee can give out. That's something that I see most years. So for your own peace of mind and to increase your chances of getting an offer, we really encourage you to apply in one of the first couple of admission deadlines. In terms of benefits, is there an actual benefit or is there an early start clause? If you apply at the first deadline, there is not. All of our deadlines are equal in that sense. So there's a question about having a 3-year degree. So UCSD does require a 4-year degree. However, they're looking at four-year degree equivalency. We have a lot of students who are coming from, who have obtained their degree from countries where it's typical to have a 3-year degree, so oftentimes the UK and also India. So what we tell students is if you have a 3-year degree and this is a top choice program for you, please absolutely apply. The UC San Diego admissions office, so the admissions office that Rady reports to, will review your degree for equivalency of a 4-year degree. Let's see, a question about submitting transcripts in original, non-English language and English. So if your university offers transcripts in English, you can go ahead and submit those, that's fine. If your university does not offer transcripts in English, if they are only issued in the language of your country, then you would need to submit the transcripts in the original language and then also submit certified translated copies. But if your university offers transcripts in English, that is perfectly fine. Next question, are there any additional requirements and deadlines to apply for the Rady Scholar Fellowship? There are not. Every student who is admitted into the program will be reviewed automatically for those merit-based Rady Scholar Fellowship. There is a limited amount of scholarship, so if the scholarship, or rather fellowship, consideration is really important to you, then I, again, recommend applying earlier in one of those first couple of deadlines as opposed to waiting to the end. Do we offer a profile evaluation session with someone from Rady? We do not. We're a very small staff, and unfortunately, we just don't have the bandwidth. That is why we provide the Cohort Profile online. We really recommend students who are curious about knowing how their background and skill sets compare to what we see in a cohort. We encourage you to navigate to that Cohort Profile page to get an idea of test score averages, work experience, universities, etc. Are we required to provide a conversion table for grading systems different than the US? No, you are not. We work with a lot of international students. Our staff and the UC San Diego staff are really used to reading and evaluating transcripts with a variety of grading scales. So you simply need to provide your transcripts as your institution offered them. Most institutions do provide a grading table on the back of the transcript, so make sure if you're scanning your transcripts that that gets included as well, but you do not need to convert your grades. Let's see. So a question about if I completed, if my program of education was in English, so the medium of instruction was in English, do I have to take a TOEFL or an IELTS? So the answer is it depends on the country. UC San Diego's policy is for international students who studied for at least 1 year in a country such as the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or the UK, then you do not have to submit a TOEFL or an IELTS. If you are in, say, India or in China, and your entire degree is in English, for example, maybe you're at the New York University Shanghai campus, and that entire program is in English, but the program is physically located in China, then a valid TOEFL or IELTS is still required, and that is a policy of UC San Diego. So for our Indian candidates, yes, that means that you typically have to take a TOEFL or an IELTS and submit that with your application. We know it's inconvenient. We know that for pretty much all of our Indian candidates, your programs are in English, but that is not a country that meets the waiver under UC San Diego policy. There's a question about deferral. So if you get an admissions offer and then you have to defer, is that something that the program offers? It does on a case-by-case scenario. If you do get an admissions offer and then for some reason you're unable to attend, you have to submit a written request for a deferral to the admissions committee, and then they will evaluate that and either approve it or deny it. In general, when students apply, it's under the assumption that they are ready to go and excited to participate in that next upcoming session. I have seen deferrals granted for situations such as a health concern, occasionally for a job promotion, and then certainly with COVID and the impacts of that, we saw an increased number of granted deferrals. Are all parts of the application equally weighted? And if one part is a little bit weaker, is that compensated with other stronger parts? I would say, so yes in the second part of the question, which is that it is certainly possible to have stronger parts of your application balance out weaker parts of the application. But I wouldn't say that they're all equally weighted. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, this is a very quantitative and technical program. One of the primary concerns or priorities of the admissions committee is to make sure that whoever is admitted into the program at the very minimum is going to have a very strong quantitative and technical skill set. You've got to be able to handle the material that's covered. It is difficult, it's challenging, and for a lot of students, it's overwhelming. So if the weaker part of your application is the quantitative side, then I don't necessarily think there's going to be anything strong enough to balance that out, because that's really just a foundational skill set. But let's say a weaker side of your application is a lower GPA. Maybe you had some health issues, maybe you had a family emergency, maybe you initially chose a major that wasn't a great fit for you. There are a lot of reasons why someone might have a lower GPA. But let's say you did well in some of the relevant classes, or maybe you've got some work experience. That is something in which a lower GPA could be balanced out by other areas of the application. We're going to talk a lot more about that in the application tips webinar next week. So I would, that's a great webinar to come join us at, because we'll cover a lot of questions like that. Do we offer application fee waivers? So the admissions committee does offer application fee waivers, at select events. This is one of those events. So if you are listening to this webinar live right now, then you are eligible for the application fee waiver. We can only apply the application fee waiver to a started application. So first and foremost, you must have already started an application fee waiver. You must have already started an application. Once you've done that, if you'd like to take advantage of the application fee waiver, you can send me an email. You can see my email on screen right there. And then we'll check your name and email against attendance at this webinar, at the live webinar, and then we will apply a fee waiver to your application. If you're listening to this webinar as the recording later on, then that is not eligible for an application fee waiver. Will a candidate who didn't have strong quantitative courses during the undergraduate study, but then did acquire math and programming during work experience, face a bigger disadvantage than those who took quantitative courses during school? This is a great question. And I think that if you didn't have a quantitative academic experience, but you've gotten a lot of relevant work experience, that is awesome. That's not a disadvantage. What the admissions committee is looking for is some experience with statistics, absolutely programming proficiency. I typically recommend Python and R because that's what the program uses. But if you have experience in C, C++, or MATLAB, that is proficient as well. And if you've gained that in your work experience, that's fantastic. You've got that real world experience and you still have that skill set. We would absolutely love to have you apply, and that's not going to be considered a disadvantage. And then a question about the recording. Yep, this is being recorded and the platform is going to send out the recording automatically. It typically does it within about an hour of the webinar ending. And we've just got a couple of minutes, or a couple of questions left. since we've reached the 9 a.m. hour here in California. And let's see here. Can we opt out of the TOEFL or IELTS if we went to high school in the US, but bachelor's outside of the US? That's a great question. I'm gonna have to double check the UCSD policy on that, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. If you've studied in the US during your degree program, that is what their policy is based on, the degree program. So if you studied in the US for high school, that's awesome. That already tells me that your English is going to be very solid and probably going to be fine for the program. You will still have to take a TOEFL or an IELTS test, but you'll probably do quite well and it won't be too difficult. And with that, I got most of the questions. There's some I might have missed. If I did, my apologies. Feel free to send that question to me via email. Again, my email is on the screen. With that, since we've reached we're a few minutes over actually, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you everyone for joining me, Emily Dayton, your full-time MSBA admissions advisor on this webinar. We really appreciate your interest in the program and you taking time out of your day or your evening to join me. I'm going to go back a slide here. I really want to emphasize the applicability of the webinar that I'll be doing next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and that's our application tips webinar. And like I said, this is our most popular webinar. I really encourage you to join us if you can. And if you cannot, please still sign up for the webinar. It will automatically send you a recording afterwards. So even if it's the middle of the night for you, or you have a school or a work conflict, and you know you can't attend, sign up for it anyway, and you'll get that recording when it's concluded. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to working with you on your application, and we hope to see each and every one of you in next year's cohort. Take care.